Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, NFL Week 10. Ian Cameron with you, and this is going to be a very rapid-fire, fast edition of the show. We're going to go just zoom through all the games on the Sunday NFL Week 10 card, the Sunday games and Monday Night Football. Let's dive right in. Very hectic week, and I was gone most of Saturday. Didn't get a chance to do any graphics on screen for game by game like normal, so we'll just rip right through it. We'll begin Cleveland, New York Jets. Cleveland 2-point road favorites, 37.5 the total. Sometimes you have to embrace the stink. This game's horrible. This game is going to be awful to watch. This game is awful to think about. But if there's an edge to be made from a betting standpoint, you got to make it. And I think there's a good case to be made to back Cleveland in this game at around a pick 'em as a short road favorite. I like betting against bad teams off a win. I don't trust bad teams. I don't trust the worst teams in the NFL or any sport off a win. They're bad for a reason. The Jets were, I think it was more bad Bengals, as much bad Bengals as it was good Jets for that win 2 weeks ago. Now they have the bye week. I don't trust the Jets to perform as well here. And I think Cleveland can run the football. The weather's not going to be great. Chance of rain and some wind in New York for this game, but especially rain. The run game is going to be important. I don't think the Jets and Breece Hall, even though he was good against Cincy, Cleveland does have a better run defense. And the Jets traded away a few defensive pieces, including Quinnen Williams earlier this week before the deadline. And an already porous run defense could be even worse because Quinnen Williams plays a role against the run on that defense. So I think Quinshon Judkins will run the football, take some pressure off, and make life easier for Dillon Gabriel at quarterback. And I think Cleveland can win this game. So Cleveland, for me, in this game against the Jets. New Orleans, Carolina. Carolina 5.5-point home favorites, 38.5 the total. And yes, I was on Carolina last week, plus 13.5 against Green Bay, win outright. I think now's the time to go against them. They have not been a favorite of more than a field goal this year. I don't trust them in this kind of role when they're now expected to win and expected to win by margin. This is still an offense that, doesn't always have it rolling every week. It's a defense that I think still has plenty of holes on it. Now, New Orleans has been bad. I get it. The last 3 games, they've been blown out by double digits at Chicago. But the last 2 games, you played Tampa Bay and you played the LA Rams. Those are pretty good teams. Now you're taking a step down in class here against the Carolina Panthers. Division dog. Now, the division dog role the angle doesn't always cash, but it does hit quite a bit in the NFL. And I think, if anything, Tyler Shuck, who took over as the starting quarterback, made his first NFL start against the Rams last week. There'll be a greater comfort for him now with a game under his belt. I would expect him to play a little bit better. And let's be honest, the Rams defense is pretty damn good. The Panthers defense is not that same defense. So I like the Saints there a little bit, plus the points. The over 2, just because I think it's a little too low with the total, 38.5. You can always often go over a total that low by accident, but I'm on the Saints there in that one. Buffalo, Miami. Buffalo 8.5-point road favorites, 50 the total. I don't have a whole lot here. Slight lean over, slight lean to Buffalo. I don't want anything to do with Miami, but the thing for the Bills is they're coming off the big win against the Chiefs. Are they prone for a bit of a hangover or a letdown? If not, they could drill this team and win by double digits. And I don't want Miami. I know that. So lean Bills, lean over. Jacksonville, Houston, near pick'em. Houston 1-point home favorites, 37 the total. I've made a small bet here on Houston. I know it's Davis Mills at quarterback for the injured C.J. Stroud, and I know Houston just finds ways to lose. It's been a lot there, and meanwhile we just saw Jacksonville find a way to win last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. But this Jacksonville team's very banged up on the offensive line. Brian Thomas, one of their top receivers, not going to play. They're already missing Travis Hunter. I mean, that's a problem to me for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Where are the weapons, especially in the perimeter here for this team? Who's going to end up? Who's going to end up? Like I said, stepping up for this team now at the receiver spot going into this game. I'm not so sure who that's going to be. So, like I said, all kinds of question marks here about weapons for Jacksonville. Houston kind of a gotta-have-it game, revenge game too. Jacksonville won earlier this year down in Jacksonville, 17-10 in that game. So, like I said, I think when you look at it with no Brian Thomas, no Travis Hunter, it's going to hurt this Jacksonville receiving core. Houston does still have a pretty good defense. Can't blame the defense for losing against Denver last week. Offense couldn't do anything. So I lean under as well. But I'm going to take a small shot with the Houston Texans there. Baltimore, Minnesota. Baltimore 4.5 point road favorites, 49 the total. I'm not stepping in front of Baltimore. We see now they're getting healthier and they're trying to make a run here to get back into the playoff race. But I was hoping to get a better number than 4.5 on the road against a Minnesota team that, look, with J.J. McCarthy back last week, looked a lot better. And a big thing, too, for Minnesota is Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill. Both came back on the offensive line against Detroit, and look at the difference they made. They were fantastic. And actually, they kept Aiden Hutchinson in a very good pass rush at bay in most of that game against the Lions last week. So the offensive line's healthier. Now a second straight start for J.J. McCarthy here. And I don't still fully trust the Baltimore defense. I know they're much healthier now, but against the better teams and offenses, that's where the Ravens have had some issues. And Minnesota's defense has been shredded and gashed week in and week out. And I think Lamar Jackson and company can do damage. So I really like this over. There won't be any weather, obviously, indoors in Minnesota. So over 48.5. I kind of lean Baltimore, but I was hoping for a better number. New England, Tampa Bay. We've got Tampa Bay 2.5 point home favorites, 48 the total. This could be where the party ends for New England. They're rolling, they're playing great, but they just squeaked one out against Atlanta. I don't think they played nearly as crisp. Tampa Bay's in a great spot, great bet on spot off a bye week at home. Tampa Bay's been good at home over the last little bit. They've scored points at home. They've scored 29, 25, and 30 points in 3 home games this year. I like the over here, 48. In this game. Drake May and that offense is rolling pretty good. There are some injuries on defense, though, for New England, and we saw that defense kind of struggle with Michael Penix and the Atlanta Falcons last week. So I think that defense could be a little bit vulnerable. Last I checked, I don't believe they are going to have Gonzalez available here for the Patriots, and he's a big part of that secondary in this one. Let me just see if he's back. It looks like they weren't expecting him to play earlier in the week, so it looks like he might go. That will be a boost for the Patriots. That being said, it is a bigger test for them. They feasted on, some weaker teams. The Buffalo win was great, but other than that, a lot of their recent wins have been, Tennessee and Cleveland and, a lot of weaker teams on the schedule. I don't think Atlanta's as good as Tampa Bay. This is going to be a good test for the Patriots. We'll see. If they pass this, wow. I'm a believer in the Patriots. I just think, it's difficult to win week in and week out. And this is a great, great spot for Tampa Bay off a bye week to get healthy and play a really good game at home. So less than a field goal, Tampa Bay for me. Over is what I like even more in this game. Giants and Bears. Chicago 4.5 point home favorites, 45.5 the total. I think the Bears would be the lean for me in this game, 4.5. I think there's a good chance they're going to be able to run the football on this Giants defense. I don't know if the Giants are going to be able to run it, and running game is going to be important here because it is expected to be, the Windy City is going to live up to its name today. They're saying for 30, 40 mile per hour winds in this game. So, and I initially really, really liked over the total in this game, thinking we'd see points, but it's not as easy to bet that. And wind is the thing that scares me the most when it comes to betting overs in outdoor football games. So I'm kind of, veering away from betting that over now with the wind expected to be in the forecast in Chicago, but I think it's Bears or nothing for me in that game. Arizona, Seattle. Seattle 7-point home favorites, 45 the total. Seattle coming off a blowout win on the road and back home and laying a big number. Sometimes that's kind of not the best situation. Sometimes, teams are overvalued in that spot, but this is a tricky spot for Arizona too. I mean, they played Dallas on a short week. Now you got to travel to Seattle. Seahawks are rolling a bit, so I laid the 6.5 with Seattle. I just really like the way they're playing. And credit to Jacoby Brissett. Since taking over for Kyler Murray, he's played very well at quarterback for the Cardinals. But I think it's safe to say this could be the best defense he's faced since taking over at quarterback. Seattle's defense just seems to be getting better and better and better each week. So I did a little bit on Seattle double result in this game and a little bit, which is lead at half, win the game. And also Seattle minus 6.5. This is another one where I have a lean to the over a bit as well at 45. Seahawks offense with Sam Darnold. Look, they're rolling, and I think Arizona's defense still can be had. Arizona, I think, will be in tougher than Seattle to move the football, but I still think they can score some points and could help this game get over the total. Detroit, Washington. Detroit 7.5-point road favorites, 49 the total. Washington's just a mess. Injuries galore. No Jaden Daniels, no Terry McLaurin, Frankie Louvu's banged up. Marshawn Lattimore's out. I mean, it's a laundry list of injuries, key injuries for Washington. They got blown out by Seattle on Sunday Night Football. They're a banged-up team. They're not playing well. They're 0-4 straight up, 0-4 against the spread their last 4 games. And, they're playing a pissed-off Detroit team that off a loss to Minnesota last week. In the Dan Campbell era, since 2022, with this Lions team, they are a perfect 12-0 straight up, 12-0 against the spread off a loss. Incredible track record off a loss for the Detroit Lions. And this is the team that knocked them out in the playoffs last year. Detroit had everything in front of them. Home field throughout the entire playoffs, number 1 seed, and Washington rolled into Detroit and handed it to them in the NFC divisional playoffs. So playoff revenge too. Detroit may show no mercy, no let up. Lay it for me, Detroit, in that one. All right, Rams and San Francisco. We've got Rams 6-point road favorites, 49.5 the total. This is one where I think the total's high. I would have liked it below the key numbers of 48 and 47, but I think we should still have the chance to see some points. San Francisco's defense just still very banged up. No Fred Warner, no Nick Bosa. Now Bryce Huff may not play, another key pass rusher. There's been back and forth all week whether he's going to play, and if he doesn't suit up, they are really going to have a hard time, I think, getting the pressure they need on Stafford. And when you don't pressure Matt Stafford, he can pick you apart. No question about that. Revenge for the Rams. They lost to Mac Jones and the Niners earlier this season. They're just a much healthier and better defense right now, in my opinion, than San Francisco. So I don't know if I want to step in front of the Rams. You're not getting a bargain now, 5.5, 6 with the Rams as road favorites, but I'm not rushing to fade them. I would look at as well there in that game as well. Sunday Night Football, Pittsburgh Steelers, LA Chargers. Chargers 2.5-point home favorites, 44.5 the total. They're just too banged up on the offensive line. When you talk about Slater and now Joe Alt, which is a huge loss, there's another lineman that may not play for the Chargers. They could be down 3 starters on the offensive line. And we saw last week against, a little bit of a superior offensive line unit with Indianapolis. Pittsburgh got after it. Watt, Highsmith, you name it. They were starting to get pressure. And if this offensive line is depleted as it appears it's going to be, that could be a major problem against the Steelers team that can get after it up front. And that, for me, is why, even though I think, Pittsburgh now, after a big win like that, they're not always trustworthy, but I just think personnel-wise, their defensive front has the chance to maul the Chargers' offensive line and really make life difficult for Justin Herbert. It's just too short-handed an offensive line right now, in my opinion, for the Chargers. So, if you can find some threes out there still are a couple threes. I'd probably mild lean Pittsburgh. Not a game I have a strong opinion on, but mild lean Pittsburgh getting a field goal there, just because I don't know how successful that Chargers offense is going to be with the O-line depletion right now. And then Monday Night Football, Philadelphia, Green Bay, near a pick'em. Green Bay 1-point favorites on Monday night at Lambeau, and the total in the 45 range. It looks like in that game, around 44.5, 45. This is another one. Actually, 45.5 is the prevailing number. A.J. Brown's going to play. Obviously, that's huge for the Eagles. And the Eagles are playing well again. They rolled the Giants. They they beat the Vikings. They rolled the Giants, but the Vikings had Carson Wentz at quarterback when they played the Eagles. That he's terrible. The offensive line was banged up. The Giants have collapsed ever since blowing that game against Denver and Cam Scadaboo's injury. So I don't want to talk about those 2 Eagle wins like there's some great wins that were big resurgence of the Philadelphia Eagles. It would be so Green Bay Packers, knowing this team over the years, to lose to Carolina, and I could see that coming, that they were going to have a battle last week against Carolina, because I took Carolina plus the points. Watch Green Bay bounce back and win this game. Now, Tucker Kraft's a big deal. Him being out is significant, and they are banged up at the skill positions a little bit. The offensive line has not been great for the Packers, and that's a concern against this front for the Eagles. But this would be so Green Bay to lose like they did last week against Carolina and beat Philadelphia. I'm leaning Packers, and I know Philadelphia probably has the better personnel advantage right now, beat them in the playoffs last year. But this is just one of these games this week where I feel Green Bay could take it. I just do. I feel Green Bay could take it. Philadelphia, I'm sorry. Beating the Carson Wentz-led Vikings and an offensive line that was banged up in that game, and then the Giants last week, doesn't do anything for me. It just doesn't. This is going to be a much bigger challenge. Even with Green Bay's flaws, this is going to be a much bigger challenge here for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm actually going to, it's Packers or nothing for me. I'm not running to bet Philadelphia there in that game. All right, there you have it. That is my rapid fire look at NFL Week 10 on this edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Let's wrap it up with best bets, or a best bet for the card today. Let's see what we're going to go. You know what? How can I not use a 12-0 against the spread angle as a best bet? And that's the Detroit Lions off a loss since November of 2022 under head coach Dan Campbell. That's right, 12-0 straight up, 12-0 against the spread off a loss. Detroit against a banged-up Washington team. Let's lay the 7.5 with the Lions. I expect a double-digit win. Washington's not only injury-riddled, but they're playing awful football right now. 0-4 straight up, an ATS slide. Detroit lays it on Washington. Lions minus 7.5 for my Week 10 NFL best bet for Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. That's a wrap. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button. We'll get back to a more extensive, full-length show next week, hopefully, and looking forward to that. Enjoy the games and good luck for NFL Week 10. And I'm Ian Cameron. This has been another edition of the show, and we'll see you again next week for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.